topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning. Welcome. This is the first day of December. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I wanted to take off, and I went to my emails on Thursday night, and I was barraged with your letters. People thanking us, giving us so many experts, but one of the experts that most of you wrote on was our show coming up now with the law firm of Lance Drury, attorney Lance Drury. Good morning, attorney.
Good morning, Steve. I hope you had a great holiday.
I did. You know what, Lance? It was funny because I thought about you during the holidays because we got so many emails, people thanking us. And a couple of them were from wives whose husbands are suffering, getting those letters from the IRS, and they keep putting them in that drawer, which you've heard the story so many times, thinking they're going to go away. And your show has really waken up people that they need to take care of this. But mostly, Lance, I got to tell you, this is the Christmas season. And I've learned by your show that it is so difficult on people when the IRS is coming after them, when all they got to do is come to your firm and let you take care of it all.
That's right, Steve. That's what we do. We've done it for many, many years. We have more than 1,000 clients at any one time. We're a 4.8 out of 5 in St. Louis on Google reviews. We're a 4.9 out of 5 in Nashville. So, I'm 72. We keep growing the business. We got an office now in Houston, Texas. And I'll tell you, we're just getting more and more clients all the time. And, this is all we do. This is all we do. I'm the liberation architect, Steve. I save people from the clutches of the IRS. We protect their income. We protect their assets. We get them the best deal possible on the back taxes. And we make sure that they're compliant moving forward. So it's a three-pronged approach that we do when people come to us and hire us. And we've been here for people forever. Years ago, I was on a Sunday morning talk show in St. Louis, and I told the host, I said, I'm the guy who's saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong. That's what we do. I love it. I'm 72. I hope I'm doing it 10 years from now.
Yeah, I can hear the excitement in your voice. I was starting to tell you about, we got a letter. We just started doing a national show with you several months ago, and we got a letter from a CPA firm in Augusta, Georgia. And the guy, actually, he said this is their 35th year in business. He found your show accidentally. And he said, I was going to listen to it for 5 or 10 minutes before I had a client to come in. He said, I ended up listening to the whole show. I had to ask my client to wait. And he said, I then tuned into your next show. And he said, we really don't do the work like Lance Drury does. We're a CPA firm. And I got to tell you, after listening to his 2 shows, we are going to be sending him our clients who are in trouble with the IRS. I thought that was, first of all, he took the time to write it, but I thought that was a great letter, Lance.
Yeah, oh, that sounds just great. I tell everybody, Steve, if they don't hire us, there's three rules. You hire an attorney that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the number. I can't do what the CPA firm does and prepare all those returns. But a lot of people go to their accountants to solve their tax problems, and those accountants just dabble with the IRS. We spend 50 to 100 hours or more a year just keeping up on this. I tell people to go local, and number three, don't hire one of the big boys. They just take your money and they don't do a whole lot of work for you. So that's great because, that's what we have an expertise that those accounting firms don't have. And one of the biggest problems in that area, Steve, is, and I'm hoping there's a bunch of accounting firms listening to this because I see this all the time. Their clients come to them, they got 10 years of unfiled returns, and the accountant tells them, you need to get all 10 years tax returns prepared and filed. That's a huge mistake because if the IRS hasn't filed and you don't file, there's zero liability on the books. The IRS only requires that the last 6 years be filed so that you're considered compliant and can negotiate a settlement with them. And so if you're self-employed and you haven't made estimated tax payments in years and you file a return more than 9 years ago, guess what? You're going to have tens of thousands of dollars in liability that didn't need to be put on the books.
Right.
That's why you got to get somebody who's an attorney that does this every single day. And that's what we do. And we keep growing the business, Steve. So we got to be doing something right.
I want to warn people, Ray, because I see a lot of these national commercials and somehow my name got put on the list. I get these robo calls. I'm going, I don't have a tax problem. Why are you telling me I do? There are so many scam artists out there. But another thing is these big national companies, I've done due diligence on them. Our show's been running for 16 years. I am telling you that if you go to their Google, you brought up about how strong your Google report is. Mostly people will say, I paid them and I couldn't even get them to return a phone call after they got my check. I know you've heard stories like that.
All the time, Steve. And what happens is those big national firms, they have salespeople that do the initial consultation. They don't have a professional do it, an attorney or an accountant. They just have a salesperson do it, and they promise them the sun and the moon. And, then because I've talked to people that worked for those firms, and then when the attorneys or the enrolled agents got the cases, they said, well, we can't do that for the client. So they make unrealistic expectations to the clients. They give them unrealistic expectations. And that's one of the things that you got to do. Steve, it's true. You can settle for pennies on the dollar, but you got to prove to the IRS that your client doesn't have the ability to pay it back. So it's not like you can just call them up and wave a magic wand and say, hey, it's going to go away. It doesn't work like that. It's a lot of work for the taxpayer. It's a lot of work for us. But if you want to get your clients the best deal possible, you got to put the time in and you got to temper their expectations. Somebody that makes $500,000 a year is probably going to pay all their liability back. Although we have a guy in Nashville and about 40% of his $500,000 liability went away. So he came out pretty good on that deal. But that's unusual because sometimes you can run out the clock on collections. Particularly now, the IRS is so far behind. And now with the shutdown, half of the IRS was working. They were still sending out levy letters. But I'm sure it's probably going to be the first of the year before they really start gearing up again. So now's the time to get started because this gives you so much time. This is not going to go away overnight. Nobody fills those financial statements out right. We have to go through them 3, 4, 5 times. And the president of the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers has said, if you're not working at least 9 months on your client's case, you're not getting them the best possible deal. So it's a lot of time for the taxpayer. It's a lot of time for us, but that's what you got to do.
I don't know if it's because taxes are so high But God, since we started doing the national show, we are getting so many people write us from California. Here's Greg in Anaheim, California. He said, I heard about your show and I started watching it. I wonder, what is the difference between a lien and a levy?
Well, the difference between a lien and a levy, Steve, is that a levy is an actual seizure of income or assets. Now, the two most frequent are they'll wipe out your bank account, they'll take 90% of your take home pay, or they can take 100% of your 1099s. Now, if you're a 1099, but you have different clients all the time, it's going to be hard for them to track it down. But a lot of 1099 employees work for the same employer for years and years. And so that's easily tracked. So you don't want to get into that situation. A lien, on the other hand, is, the IRS will file a notice of federal tax lien in the recorder's office in the county in which you live. Now, that's not an actual seizure of property, but at the time of sale of any real estate, if it's filed in the proper county in which the real estate is located, that lien has to be satisfied at the time of sale. So people come to me, they hire us, they want to sell their home. There's no federal tax lien. I said, okay, you sell your home now before we get you an agreement, because once we get you an agreement, they're going to file a lien, and you don't want it filed because you don't want that lien to be satisfied at the time of sale. So that's the distinction between a lien and a levy. One is an actual seizure of property or income. The other is not.
Lance, this is not a scare tactic show. This is a show to educate you so you can make good decisions. I wanted to say that before this next question. This is from Alex in Los Angeles. He wants to know, can I go to jail for owing taxes?
You can't normally go to jail for owing taxes, but you can go to jail for not filing your tax return. Now, it's not, it's not usual for that to happen, but it's against the law not to file your tax returns. And the federal government is going to require that the last 6 years' tax return be filed before they're even going to talk to you about your back tax liability. They figured if you can't even file your tax returns, why should we give you an agreement on the back taxes? So you got to file the returns. I cannot tell anybody that comes to me not to file the return because, it's a crime not to do that. And as an attorney, I have an ethical obligation to tell people that. So you got to file those returns. You got to file the last 6 years. You don't see it very seldom. You see it more at the state level, but that's normally for unpaid sales tax, which most people don't know. That's a crime. And even if you have a business, even if it's a corporation, all those state statutes say that they can come after you personally for 100% of the state sales tax. I have a woman now. She's out of Joplin, Missouri. She called me on Wednesday. I was supposed to talk to her on Friday, but I didn't get her paperwork. I talked to her on Saturday, and I talked to her yesterday, and her sister has hired me. Her sister owes $150,000
Wow.
in unpaid sales tax. And it's a business, and they go after, in the States, mostly restaurants and convenience stores because they figure everybody's owing money. But people don't know when they come to me that failing to pay their sales tax is a crime. And the reason is the state considers that stealing because it was never your money. You were just there to collect the sales tax for the state. And so, she's concerned about getting it reduced and all that. I said, I can't guarantee you that. They're much tougher on sales tax. But I said, you need to hire me so that this doesn't turn criminal. Because if it turns criminal, then you've got big problems. And even though you might get probation the first time around, and likely would, absent exceptional circumstances, they're going to revoke your probation if you don't make the restitution. So you want to take care of this before it's referred to criminal investigation.
Lance, I try to pull the best emails. We get so many of them. This is from Tracy in Davie, Florida. She said, I saw you on your show on Facebook, and I saw it was coming on. I'm so glad I found your show. Can you explain what the negatives are if I try to negotiate with the IRS myself? That is a great question. We talk about it every show.
Yeah, and here's the problem is that, you know, we spend 50 to 100 hours or more a year keeping up on this. Now, they'll never tell you this, but people think they can do it on their own. So they call the IRS, they set up an agreement. It's always for the full amount because they take advantage of lay people. And then they call me, or they sit across from me in my office in this very room. And the first words out of their mouth are, I can't afford the monthly payment. And I go, then why did you agree to that? And they'll say, this is because this is what the IRS told me I had to pay. That's not true. They take advantage of lay people. It's all based on your ability to pay it back. And that's where you get the biggest bang for your buck in hiring my firm, because nobody fills out those financial statements right the first time. They're confusing, they're complicated to the average individual. So we spend more time compiling and analyzing financial information than anything else we do. We may have to go back and forth with the taxpayer 3, 4, 5 times because we got to get those numbers right. Because guess what? You're submitting those under penalties of perjury. And secondly, you give us bad numbers, we're going to give you bad advice. So you got to make sure that they're correct. So they are going to take care. And here's the other thing. It's not just individual. I've seen people with payroll tax that thought they could deal with a revenue officer on their own. They get a 9297. It's a summary of taxpayer contact. They think they sent everything in. Next thing they know, they got levied. Because that RO, that revenue officer, is not going to call them up and tell them he didn't get everything. He's just going to levy them. That's not true with us, because we'll follow up when we send it in. Is there anything else you need? Is there anything else? And so he's more likely to work with us than a lay person. And the reason I know that is people come to me all the time after they've been levied, then they hire me. And then, of course, it's harder to get the levy lifted than it is to stop a levy. But, you know, then we find out, because they'll say, oh, I sent them everything in, and 95% of the time they didn't send everything in. So that's the other reason why people do not need to do this on their own.
This is from Michael in Sacramento. I owe taxes, but I haven't filed returns for a number of years. What should I do? I can answer that. I need to hire Lance Jury.
Well, here's the problem, and we go into this all the time. I talked to a guy Friday in St. Louis at my office up there, and he's had the returns filed, but he hasn't filed them. It's a big mistake, and this happens a lot, and people are scared because they don't have the money to pay the tax, so they don't file the return. But here's why it's a big mistake, because in addition to the failure to pay penalty and interest, there's a failure to file penalty. It's 5% per month for the first 5 months that you don't file. And then it maxes out at 25%. Well, guess what? You have a $10,000 raw tax liability. You just elevated that tax liability to $12,500. And we haven't even talked about the failure to pay penalty or the interest. So you don't want to sit on those returns, even if you have liability. You want to send them into the IRS, because eventually, unless they get old enough, you're going to have to send those in. And so it's a big mistake not to do that, because you've just increased your liability by 25% in most cases.
Chris in Tampa, I just heard about your show. Do you think an offer and compromise is a good tool, or is a tool you like to use?
It is, and everybody likes it because they know once the offer's accepted, they've fulfilled all the conditions, the liability goes away. You got to be compliant, though, for 5 years moving forward. So I don't always recommend it to people who have a long history of non-compliance. But here's the problem. Not everybody qualifies. And so we have an office in Nashville, Tennessee. And Steve, I know you know this, but Nashville is now the place to be in the Midwest.
Yes.
People are moving from California paying $200,000 over the listed price for homes. So probably 98% of our clients in the Nashville area do not qualify for an offer in compromise because of the net equity in their home. You know, they bought the home years ago and there's not a huge loan on it. And now the home's worth $750,000 to $1 million. So guess what? That alone is going to kick them out of the offer because it's very formulaic. They look at the net equity that you have in assets. They look at your income and expenses for your household expenses. And then you can probably most of the time tell the client a ballpark as to what it's going to take for that offer to be accepted. So the biggest problem in some places is the net equity in their real estate, and that kicks them out of an offer in compromise. But it's a great deal if you qualify for it.
Phil in Chattanooga wants to know, will an IRS payment plan affect my credit?
Well, it could, but the thing is, that's no longer reflected on your credit score that you have a lien with the IRS. And normally, once you set up a payment plan, if you're over $10,000, the IRS is going to file a lien. Although sometimes you can prevent that up to $50,000. But it might affect your ability with your bank to get a loan. In fact, in a lot of these cases, you know, where people have a lot of equity in their home, the IRS wants a loan denial letter from the lending institution or the bank to show that they can't pay off the debt. So you ask for a loan in the amount of your IRS debt, and 99% of the time that's going to get denied because of your tax liability. So, yeah, it could have some repercussions. It's probably more of a problem if you're self-employed, because your suppliers don't like to get those levy notices. They don't want to deal with that. But but it's not going to be on your credit scores anymore. And that changed in 2018.
Lance, I'm going to end the show on this. I know it's really cold where you're at too, but wait till you get to San Antonio. It'll be nice and warm when you get there.
You're right. You're right. I'm ready to go.
So tell me, we've got all these people watching and listening to the show. Why should I hire your firm?
Because we go the extra mile, because we're a 4.8 out of 5 on Google reviews in St. Louis. We're a 4.9 out of 5 in Nashville. I've co-authored a number of books. I've won top practitioner award from the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers. I have the best practitioners, the best lawyers I've ever had in all the years that I've done this. I'm 72. We still keep growing the firm. We have more than 1,000 clients. The day is going to come when we have 2,000 to 3,000. And just for all your listeners in California and Florida, we're going into Miami and Los Angeles next. We just started, and that could be another year or so yet, Steve. But we just started up a Houston office. We have 2 attorneys in San Antonio. So we're going to build up Texas first. But, you know, I tell everybody here we have a moral obligation to help as many people as possible. And that's what I'm going to do, Steve.
Man, I got to tell you, you are so God sent. We do a show together on just in the Tennessee and Missouri area, which is the last Friday of each month. And then we do a show for Texas, for San Antonio, which is going to be coming up soon. Lance, tell people how they can reach you again.
Well, you can see the numbers at the bottom of the screen, but go to lancedrurylaw.com. You can get a lot of useful information there. You can see a lot of testimonials, and you can get all the phone numbers depending upon where you're located.
It's amazing because we don't practices. Lance has no idea which questions I'm going to ask, and you can see it doesn't matter what we ask him, he's right on the ball. Again, thank you so much. I'm glad you had a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you this month several times.
Okay, great to see you again, Steve.
You're such a great person. Thanks, Lance. That's Attorney Lance Drury. It's the Drury Law Firm. Lance will be back again with us the end of this month, last Friday at 2:00 Eastern Time. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week. Feel Better, our great, great producer, Rebel, will be with you again next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.